What if the secret to better leadership and a better life is surrender? In this episode, I talk with workplace culture expert Dr. Jessica Kriegel about how a devastating loss, a spiritual awakening, and a radical act of letting go transformed her from a driven executive chasing success to a purpose driven leader inspiring transformation through love, faith, and humanity. We explore death, leadership, spirituality, and the power of surrender, not as giving up, but as stepping fully into truth. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today, I am joined with Dr. Jessica Kriegel. Jessica is a workplace culture expert, keynote speaker, and researcher. As Chief Strategy Officer at Culture Partners, she leads research that challenges outdated ideas about control, power, and performance, offering bold new frameworks that drive real results. She's the host of the CEO Daily Brief and Culture Leaders podcasts, and a frequent guest on CNN, Fox Business, CNBC, and Bloomberg. Jessica holds an MBA and doctorate in educational leadership and is currently pursuing a Master of Divinity. She's also a trained death doula, a role that deepens her presence and perspective as a leader. Her first book, Unfairly Labeled, breaks down generational myths in the workplace, and her upcoming book, Surrender to Lead, launches in January 2026. When she's not doing everything else, she's cruising in a motorcycle sidecar with her 8-year-old daughter. Very cool. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, lots of places to start here. I was immediately intrigued by several parts of your background, including motorcycles.
Love that.
Death doula, there's a lot of spirituality, and then there is the emergence into being a leader in the field of leadership. So I guess the first thread I want to ask you about is how your road to death doulaship and how that, like what led you there and how that perspective impacts how you live and work.
Great. I love starting there. I think that being a death doula is the most meaningful work that I do. And it fills my heart. It allows me to be present in a way that is really a struggle for me in other places in my life. So I love talking about it. I became a death doula. Well, let me go back. My life up until my late 30s was all about me. I was very self-centered by nature. I was very interested in being rich and powerful, having as much accolades as I could possibly gain. I just wanted more. And because there was this hole in my heart that I thought money and fame would fill. And I was unaware of that. I mean, my self-awareness was really abysmal. I was one of these leaders that you coach that you're like, they're never going to figure this out because their whole life is backwards, right? That was me. And everything turned upside down when my dad died. My dad died suddenly. He was in an elevator. He was alone. And it was a very traumatic moment for me. And I spiraled. I was already a little bit nuts, right? I mean, obviously. And then I spiraled out of control into even more insanity, which looked like manifested as alcoholism, gone insane. And the next year, the year after my dad died, I was really just trying to fill my life with as much activity as possible so that I could avoid grief. And so I was doing more than ever before. I was working on my career 24/7. I did have a baby at the time, but I mean, my maternity leave ended real quick because I had to get back to work, thinking that work might make me feel better. And it led to a breaking point. I had what a lot of executives have. A lot of the people that we work with, the CEOs, they experience a moment in which everything turns upside down. For some, a large bulk of people had this experience during COVID
Mhm.
when their priorities flipped and they realized, wait, what really matters? Have I been putting too much energy in things that don't hold a lot of meaning for me? Do I want to change my priorities? And that happened for me. So I had a spiritual experience. I was a lifelong atheist at the time. I had a spiritual
Mm.
experience that was one of these coincidences that you can't explain. And I instantly became a believer. I didn't know what I believed in because I had never been to church. I'd never been exposed to religion, really, not in my family, not elsewhere. So that's why I went to divinity school because I figured I would learn about God and
Mhm.
figure out what exactly I believed in. And then I realized in that moment that life was about more than just me and that my priorities had been completely backwards. And every decision I had made previous to that moment when I was 37 was made with me in mind. And that felt empty suddenly. So I figured I had to be of service. It was also something I had never done before. I was always on the me train. And so at the time, I was dating a guy who was the CEO of a hospital. And I'm like, I got to be of service. What do I do? And he said, why don't you volunteer in our No One Dies Alone program? And it's a
Hmm.
program for people who come into the hospital who don't have any family or friends. They have 24 to 48 hours left to live, usually on average. And the nurses or the doctors see that they don't have any visitors and they call a task force of volunteers who come and sit in 4-hour shifts with those patients so that they don't die alone because the nurses and doctors are busy. They got a lot of patients. They might be out of the room. And so it's really a practice of sitting and largely,
Mhm.
oftentimes, with people who are not conscious. And that's where I began. That was in 2020. And I've been doing it ever since. And it is the most sacred space that I can be in.
That's a beautiful program and beautiful work. Um, my wife got trained a few years ago in this as well, so I have like hearing about it from her perspective, and this is I, this is a part of the life cycle that seems like we Americans often pull away from instead of lean into, right? And um, had a podcast actually last that came out this week was with a medium, an evidential medium, which was a new experience to have him on the podcast. And what he talked about was it's not goodbye, it's hello, and it's like the end of one thing is the beginning of a next thing, and having that connection like through death and beyond, how that expands our perspective of connection, of love, and of energy. And so I didn't expect to hear your story in this way, and so that's so fresh for me. So I'm wondering about what have you like I imagine you experience lots of different things when you're in that moment with people as they transition.
Mm, yeah. It is the closest, I believe, and different people believe different things, and that's totally okay. What I believe is that it is the closest I can get to the spiritual realm when someone transitions to that realm and things happen in the room, experiences are had, people are talking, they're saying things, they're looking at things that I don't see. And it it feels like I'm close to something supernatural, but godly,
Mhm.
It's it is very interesting and it can be explained in lots of different ways and everyone can come up with their own belief about around what's happening in those rooms. I have my own, obviously.
Yeah.
Um I think that what's interesting is recently I've started volunteering at a homeless hospice. And the homeless hospice is a completely different environment because these are people, in order to be eligible for hospice, you need to have a place for care and a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. Homeless people, when they go into the hospital and they have that prognosis, because they don't have a place for care, they're just sent back out onto the streets
Mhm.
to die. So there is a homeless hospice here in Sacramento called Joshua's House, where these people who would have died on the streets are now
Mm.
given a home, a place to be. And those moments, long before they pass, have actually become even more profound for me because of their perspective about having a home, the gratitude that they have in the face of the end of their lives, and how I come from a business meeting where I'm talking to executives about driving quarterly business results and people are upset about some process or technology glitch that didn't go well. Then I go in and I sit with Rick at Joshua's house, and he's so grateful to be able to sit outside, and it puts everything into perspective,
Yeah.
and that's good for me.
Such important programs. And I imagine there's a healing aspect for you, given the traumatic way that your dad left, that you can be there for so many.
Yeah. And to be there with him in spirit, to have some kind of
Yes.
conscious contact with whatever the
Yes.
higher power is, right?
Yes. Okay, you probably weren't expecting all of these spiritual questions, so you just tell me if we're going too far in this direction. I because
No,
I
I
just have
love it. This is the
okay.
meaning of life, dude.
All
Your
right.
whole intro is about meaning. So
Yeah,
here
yeah,
we are.
absolutely. Um, you alluded to your spiritual experience, and if you're comfortable sharing aspects to us. So, a theme has also been sprinkled through several podcasts lately about serendipity and being open and being aware to all that's out there beyond that we're normally focused on. So, wondering if there's anything that you care to share about your experience.
About that moment that made
Yeah,
me a believer. Yeah,
yeah,
I'll tell you the story. It's
yeah.
a great story. So my father was an adventurer. He was the CEO of a company, and his company was creating a lot of stress and anxiety for him, as a lot of executives experience, right? And he had a moment of his own breaking point in which he decided to sell it all. He sold his business, he sold his house, he sold everything that he owns. He bought a motorcycle with a sidecar, the
Hmm.
one that's in my garage right now.
Yep, yep.
And he left on a 12-year trip around the world. And
Wow.
he was homeless by choice, okay?
Right.
He was someone who decided to forego the cell phone bill and the mortgage payments and everything, and he was just a free man. And he called it the timeless ride because there was no schedule and no agenda. He every morning he would say, "My choice is to wake up and either turn left or turn right." And he did that for 12 years. He was a legend in the motorcycle community. When I got pregnant, when I was about 35 or 36, I asked him to come to Sacramento to be with me for the birth of my baby because, you want your dad there. You want your mom and dad to come and take care of you when you're having these big moments. So he came for 3 months, and every morning we would go for a walk on the river. I lived on this little house on the river, and we would have a 90-minute walk where we would talk about things we hadn't talked about because he was on his trip. So we stayed in contact, but it was like so rich for me to be able to ask him questions about, when my daughter comes here, how do I act? What do I do? And he asked me what name I had chosen for her, and I didn't want to tell him in case he didn't like it. You know how sometimes you just keep it a secret so they have
Yeah,
to pretend to like it once
exactly.
you tell them,
Exactly.
once the baby's there.
Yeah.
So he made up a name for her, and I don't know where he got this name, but he just came up with Violetta. I mean, we're not Italian, but Violetta. So we would talk about her using that name. When Violetta gets here, blah blah blah. Cut to a few months later, my daughter's born. Her name is Eleanor. She was beautiful and wonderful, and my dad loved her and was a great grandpa. And about a month after she was born, he went back on the road and he flew back to Switzerland where his motorcycle was. He landed at the airport, and the second he landed, he had the thought, "What am I doing here?
Mm,
I just left my family, and my meaning is no longer in adventure. My meaning is back with family."
mm.
So he flew back literally the next day and arrived and said, "The timeless ride is over. I'm going to live in Sacramento, of all places, and help you raise your baby and be with my wife." My mom and dad were together for that entire 12 years, just long
Oh,
distance.
wow,
It was
that's interesting.
remarkable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so we had to put together a communication plan for letting the world know that the trip was over because, I mean, he was in the media, he was a big deal. And 2 days later is when he had the heart attack in the elevator and he died suddenly.
Oh,
So it was particularly devastating because I thought I was getting him back, you know,
right,
and
right.
to lose him, at my hopes were up. I mean, it's not even the right words. I was just so grateful. And then it was gone. And so alcoholism increased. I was going insane. A year later, my husband and I broke up. He just didn't even know who I was anymore. To be fair, I was totally destructive as a person and not a good wife. And the morning that we split up, I went for a walk on the river. Well, actually, I wanted to go to the gym, but I couldn't because the car wouldn't start.
Mm.
So then I thought I'll bike to the gym, and I couldn't because the bike had a flat. So then I tried to use my ex-husband's bike, and his bike seat was broken. So I didn't believe in God. If I
The
did,
universe is
I
leading you.
right? You would think that that's the thought. God
Right.
is telling you not to go. But I
Yeah.
didn't think that. I was
Yeah.
just frustrated that I wasn't getting my way. And so I decided to go on a walk on the river, which is the first time I had gone on that walk since he died because I was avoiding grief that whole time. It was too much to go walk on the path. I went with my dad. So I go on the walk. We're coming to the end of the story here. I call my best friend. I say, my husband and I just broke up. I don't know what to do. And my best friend says, well, what are you feeling? And I said, I just miss my dad. And he said, what would your dad say right now? And I said, he wouldn't say anything. He would just do something to let you know that everything's going to be okay. And at that exact second, as I was saying those words, I looked down at the ground and there's brand new graffiti on the ground that has never been there before that said Violetta. I get
Chills.
goosebumps.
Chills. Yep.
I mean,
Goosebumps.
years later, I still can't. It's like he's with me when I tell the story, you know? So, I fell to my knees. I literally got on my knees in the middle of this river walk in Sacramento, and I put my hands in a prayer position because it felt right. I thought it meant something, and I said, "I will never question if there's a God again." And that was my moment of surrender. I mean, that was the moment that everything in my life changed. And yet I had no idea what I was doing next, but I knew that everything had to change, you know?
Thank you for sharing that. Oh man. Um, that is a remarkable and magical story. And I've been hearing about more and more of them.
Mm,
These sorts of connections, these sorts of messages that, and I like how you say it. This isn't about being like a believer or a non-believer, or there's so many ways we can look at this. I feel like it's just for wherever anyone is on, if we call this their spiritual journey, their human journey, and their spiritual journey, is the messages that keep coming up from guests are to be open and to look for synchronicities and to just literally be open and willing to consider, right? Just be
mhm.
curious. And that moment has changed your life. I like literally changed your life. And there's two places I want to go here. So I'm going to say two things, and you pick to which one makes more sense right now.
Ooh, choose your own
Yeah,
adventure.
here's my adventure because
Yay.
I see, yes, I see one is your path to sobriety and how all of the surrendering, the spirituality, that path, and then the other path, which might be this, you might be choosing this one after, is how all of these experiences, um, your Masters of Divinity, this experience with your dad, sobriety had just changed the way you looked at leadership and business.
Yeah. Well, they're the same, right? I think you're
Yeah.
right that they're one big, it's a holistic experience. Um, so the book I have coming out is called Surrender to Lead. And that's not a coincidence because this is the big lesson that I had that changed my life, but also changed my results. I mean, so if you look at my career trajectory before that moment, it was, up and to the right. And it was not the exponential kind of blow my mind success that I've had since that moment of surrender. And what's really interesting about it is I actually thought I should just leave the corporate world altogether when I had that moment of surrender. As I started volunteering in the No One Dies Alone program, I thought this is far more meaningful than giving keynotes to 3,000 people at the International Salt Shaker Maker Conference in Hawaii about driving a culture of results. Like when you have to pick between sitting with someone who's dying and being on stage, what led me to want to be a keynote speaker was a need for validation. And suddenly I didn't need that validation. And so the high of being on stage was empty.
Hmm.
And I didn't see the impact of the work that I was doing necessarily. And I saw a bunch of people burned out at work and a bunch of leaders focused on results and not people. And it just felt like, why don't I just give it all up and go become a hospice caregiver. I mean, that feels important. And it was as soon as I gave up that the phone started ringing off the hook, because that pushiness that I had exuded beforehand about wanting more and trying to get more and trying to sell myself, and that as soon as I said, you know what, I'm good, suddenly people, it was like I was pulling people in. And this story, I mean, these kind of think conversations that I were having shifted. It was no longer about what can you do for me, but it was about, let me tell you what I've learned about this that has nothing to do with that. And people were intrigued and connected to it. And so I turned that into a lesson of leadership. And where I ultimately decided to stay was, I feel like I can make a difference. I have the ear of some of the most powerful people in the world. And if I can use that influence to make the world better, because we spend so much time at work. And if I can make that workplace more, not only successful for the business leader, but also fulfilling for the employees, well, then I'm doing something really good and I can volunteer and
Hmm.
I can always become a hospice caregiver later too.
Hmm.
Also, I'm part of my master's of divinity is the chaplain track, right? So I may become a hospice chaplain one day. Who knows? But I'm kind of not worried about it, which is the whole point of surrender. It's like, I
Right.
surrender. I'm here now. People are calling and they're asking me, what can we learn about the dynamics of driving results and employee fulfillment and power and control? And I'm like, well, I actually do have something pretty different and interesting to say to that. And people, it's resonating with people, you know? I mean, Mel
Yeah.
Robbins, her book this year, Let Them Theory, it
Yeah.
blew up. It was selling, I mean, it's an unprecedented amount of sales that
Hmm.
she experienced, because let them is the idea of surrender. Let them, let go of your need to get what you want and allow things to play out the way that they will when you come from the right place, and it will
Hmm.
happen. And she gave us a testimonial saying that this was the business version of the let
I
them
saw
theory.
that. I saw that.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're so lucky because this is a time in our society right now where this resonates with people. I think they're feeling the pressure cooker is pressure cookering, and they're
Hmm.
looking for relief. I've had two executives. I was at Oracle for 10 years. The head of cloud that I was his head of strategy, he died very early from what I believe is a stress related illness. Mark Hurd, who was the co-CEO of Oracle, he died at a very young age of what I believe is a stress related illness. It is hurting us,
Yeah.
this insane pressure to produce results. And we have to figure out a better way. And surrender can feel like counterintuitive, can feel like I'm giving up on results. But we've researched this with Stanford, we've done it with our clients. It actually explodes your results. It
Yeah.
unlocks on paper 4 times the revenue growth when you lead this way, and it makes perfect sense why once you dig into it, which we can. So it just feels so like this is something good for the world. You're helping
Yes.
people. It's no longer about wanting to be seen on stage, and now it's about what I can give while I'm there. And so it feels totally different. And
Yeah.
so I'm staying for now.
Yes, and that is actually what I was gonna ask you, is how different, like, it's a whole, the words might be the same, right? The PowerPoint might look the same, but how you feel and the energy you bring, and, um, as opposed to achievement, um, and let's say accolades, it's service. Like, I
Yeah.
see it in you, I feel it in you, like, it's like you are stepping in service, and what is so fascinating to me, and why I love the not only the title, but what I have been able to read about the book and the work, and I took the personal results equation, is this is a whole different paradigm shift. This is a whole different paradigm shift in business, and what's interesting is, like, still at the of course at the end of the day, there's the metrics and there's the driving growth and driving revenue and there's all the shareholders, like, all that's still there, but coming to that is a completely different way that honors the human experience, honors the relationship, honors the culture, which is what you guys do, in a way that is so human. And we've had lots of experiences, and there still are, unfortunately, lots of experiences where people do not feel that. They have health issues. They don't want to go to work. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't have joy. And like
Yeah.
you said, this is where we spend our life. And these companies also do, many of them do very good things for our society. And it's like what I think you have pointed out in this work and your book, like, you can have it all. Like you can have it all. Like you can have a successful company with people who feel fulfilled, are healthy, and have relationship and feel cared about and seen.
Yes, and let me take it a step further, which is you can have even more than you do now with this counterintuitive approach. And I'll tell you a story of what it looks like in practice because I think this will also bring it alive for the people listening. So you can see it's not just about we have to balance people and profits and we want to make sure we're profitable, but also people are happy because if people aren't happy, they'll leave and our profitability quote might suffer. No, not with AI. People leaving is good for the balance sheet these days. So that's not the game we're playing anymore. This is about driving growth by using a better way. So the growth will be more if you do this. And so what does it look like? Here's the story. Everyone's focused on getting results in the business world, right? And there's lots of organizations we work with that are not businesses like government institutions. You know, we work with the Department of Corrections, for example, but there's still a result you're trying to achieve, whether that's profitability or a safety target, a productivity target, a whatever target, right? And then we all know that results come from actions. In order to get that result, our team needs to do a bunch of stuff. And that's where most leaders stop. That we call that the action trap. Okay. I was in the action trap for my entire career. It was, I want to be rich and famous. What do I have to do to get that? I'm going to call my network and ask them for favors. I'm going to create a website and a keynote reel that looks really good. I'm going to, go on a bunch of podcasts and try and get people to hear about me so that they'll visit my website and book me and then blah, blah, blah. Right. That's the action trap. And that does work. You will see growth when you do a bunch of action to get a result. However, where the surrender superpower unleashes your potential is when you get out of the action trap and you ask the question, okay, what is it that gets people to take action, whether it's in their families, in their communities, at work, whatever? And what motivates people to act is their beliefs, their deeply ingrained beliefs about what's right and what's wrong, what's fun and what's not, what's good and what's bad, about myself, about the company, right? We've worked with companies for 2 decades on trying to drive results. And when leaders want to change a result, they usually implement new policies or procedures or technology. But people don't change because you implement new policies and technology. People change if they believe in the company, right? Their actions are based on their beliefs. And so the question then you have to ask as a leader is what experience am I creating to drive the beliefs that my teammates have that are creating the actions they're taking, which is getting the result? And if you focus at the belief level, you change everything. So Boston Medical Center was our client, okay? The director of the emergency department had a problem because there's this in healthcare, there's always this tension between data entry and patient experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the people in the emergency department were not filling out the next of kin form when people came in. And the woman who was in charge of the emergency department, she was stuck in the action trap. We got to train everyone on the form. We got to put on the bulletin board, don't forget to fill out the form. We got to have a pizza party if we hit our target of filling out the form at least 75% of the time. We're going to do all these actions to try and get people to do the form and get
Hmm.
another result. They were at 42% of filling out the form. And after 6 months of effort, they got to 47%. It worked, right? She moved the needle 5%.
Right.
But it was a lot of effort, a lot of burnout around that,
Not a
and the
lot of pizza either.
experience
Yeah.
not a lot of pizza, and the people, their experience was, "This person is nagging me, she doesn't
Yeah.
understand patient experience," right? These
Yeah.
aren't people that didn't care.
Right.
These are people who were deeply invested in saving lives. They're like, "I got people with a gunshot wound coming in, you
Yeah.
want me to do paperwork?"
Yeah.
So we came in and we helped her identify 2 stories that she could tell that would create an experience for the employees that would shift their beliefs. And it was about a woman who came in, they did not gather her next of kin information, she went unconscious and she died. And they later found out that she had a condition if they had known about, they could have saved her. And then a man, same hospital, different time, he came into the hospital. They did gather his next of kin information. He went unconscious. They called the daughter. The daughter told them about some medication that they're on, and they saved his life. She
Mm,
told those 2 stories for 3 weeks, and they started filling out the form 92% of the time in 3 weeks. That's surrender, right?
that is right. Right.
Surrender is, I can't control these people. I can't just tell just because you have the word chief in your title doesn't mean you can make me do anything,
Hmm.
right? You're only in charge of yourself, and what you can control is the experiences you're creating. Storytelling is a powerful experience.
Right.
I told a story earlier about my Violetta thing. That's hopefully was a powerful experience that may
Yes.
create a belief in someone, may not, but experiences shape beliefs, beliefs drive actions, actions drive result. To surrender to lead is to stop trying to get in the action trap telling people what to do, which
Yes.
nobody loves, and to
Yes.
surrender to what beliefs do they have and what can I do
Right.
to
Right.
influence that.
Great stories and really powerful. You're actually reminding me of my first leadership experience when I fell into it when I was young, after becoming a psychologist and joining an organization where the leader above me left, and I didn't like that experience. And the executive director said, well, if you don't step into it, I'm going to hire someone else. So I'm like, I don't want that. So I started my journey, and what I fell into is a outpatient therapy center, mental health center, where I was managing about 25 people, and I was under the CFO and the executive director, and it was all Medi-Cal contracts, and there were all these forms that needed to be filled out and all these billing logs that needed to fill out. And a bunch of therapists are not trained to do that. And they just didn't do it, or they did it at
Right.
50%. Right. So I'm getting pounded on by the people above me. The people below me are like, this is not why we went into this field. They don't understand the work we do. We're in the trenches. And the people on top say, you don't understand. Like, and they're, of course, everyone's right from their perspective. So I went into the CFO and said, can you explain to me how the whole system works from the top down, from the county, blah, blah, blah. Got all the information, and it all just made sense to me. And I went back into this group and I said, hey, let me just tell you what I learned, and how it all works, and why we have to fill out those forms. Because if we don't fill out the forms, we can't bill the county. If we can't bill the county, we don't have a center. They reduce our contract. We can't do the work we all care about. And the reason I told the story in a way that was meaningful to me and then to them. And all of a sudden it was like 90%. And again, without,
Yeah,
but
you
yeah,
shifted their beliefs by creating an experience instead of saying, "You guys really got to fill out this form, dude. We're going to put you on a performance improvement plan if you don't."
yeah, that
It
didn't
doesn't
work.
work.
That didn't work,
Mhm.
including that I was being threatened to tell them if they don't turn the stuff in, they're not going to get paid that pay period. Like, you're right.
Which is
I'm like,
not
yeah,
legal, but
that's
okay.
not gonna
Yeah.
work. So this whole idea of like, so it's so meaning based. Like that's,
Yeah.
you alluded to that earlier. Like this is so meaning based, and you're bringing in the human caring, the human connection, in this belief, right? It's just something that people, it speaks to them, whether it's widgets or it's hospice. It's something that speaks to them, so they buy in a um, genuine way, not of we're going to hold these things over you to make sure that you keep your performance at this level.
Right. It's moving it from the head to the heart and creating buy-in. And
That's
the
it.
challenge
That's
with
it.
this exact problem in business is that people can be binary in their thinking about people versus profitability. And they think that one is at the expense of the other because employees are a cost center on paper. And that's the thought when HR comes to you with a budget request for a team building retreat, and we're going to do ropes courses. We're going to get everyone really jazzed about, our employee engagement scores. It's like that is a cost center because that's also action trapping your culture, right?
Hmm.
What we want is for people to feel fulfilled in the work that they're doing and bring their everything to it. And when we talk to CEOs, we ask them this question, which we say, okay, if you could make the choice, choose your own adventure, to circle back to that, right? Choose your own adventure. You keep everyone on your team at your current headcount the way that it is right now, or we make you slash 30% of your headcount. You have to do a lot with less, but we promise you that the 70% of people that are left, they are going to give a shit. They are going to care deeply about what you're doing, and they're going to feel fulfilled in driving results. Would you take the deal? They're all like, of course I would take the deal, because they know that there's a whole group of people at their company right now that already exist that have quiet quit. They're
Right.
completely checked out. They're apathetic. They don't trust the leadership team. They're there because they need a paycheck and they don't care, you know? And that's costing them money. So we have to, I view myself as an evangelist to help explain how this is, not at the expense of shareholder value creation, but in
Hmm.
service to it. And by the way, if it helps millions of people while we're at it, let's do that because
Yeah.
it's much more human.
So you are modeling, but living, not modeling, not but living, modeling and living, being like fully in alignment, um, and in integrity. And so, what can you describe the difference of the previous kick-ass exec you and the one after the transformation in terms of are the are the word like I know the words are a little different because you're coming from a different place, but I guess I'm also thinking of you back on stage. It seems like the transmission of the message and the energy of the message is so different now than when it was when you were still successful.
Yeah. Well, transmission for sure. I watch videos of me from 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, keynoting, and I think, oh, I'm such a pompous ass, like it's just so horrible. Like I'm so mortified. Um, that's the messaging part of it. But remember, I'm also an executive, right? So the decisions that I make are different too. And I will give you a before and after example, and it has to do with something very controversial, which is layoffs, right? Layoffs are more popular now than ever before. It used to be that if you had layoffs at your company, that was a signal to the market that you were failing. Now, layoffs are a signal to the market that you're improving efficiencies and your stock price goes up when you announce layoffs. So they are an
Mm.
attractive solution for people these days, whereas before they were something to be avoided at all costs. So I was the head of strategy at Oracle for the head of strategy for the transition from being an on-prem company to a cloud company, reporting into Sean Price, who was the head of cloud. And that was a big transition, right? You got a bunch of people who are experts in being on-prem. The future of the company is cloud. And that requires a shift in talent, training people, but also perhaps letting people go. And the way that layoffs get managed everywhere, this is universal, is the way that we managed it, which is you make a decision that you're going to do layoffs. You get the finance analyst to help you figure out how many layoffs you have to do in order to meet the budget need. You have a bunch of secret meetings and you keep it super hush hush. And then you organize a communication plan. You loop in HR, you get the managers ready to go, and then you pull the plug on the day of and you let those people know that they're out. You cut off their access to their email and their Slack. And then you announce it to the rest of the team and you color it in an email with some language that makes it seem a lot better. Like, we've decided to invest in the future of this company's technological abilities. And unfortunately, we had to make some difficult decisions in the process, right? And you kind of
Blah 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 blah
vaguely,
blah. Right?
blah,
Yeah, yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's the before. Right after I had this moment of surrender, I became the CHRO at a technology company, a smaller company. And my first executive retreat, the board let us know that we had to have layoffs because we had just leased a bunch of classy or pricey class A office space in Silicon Valley. And then COVID happened and no one was going to the office and we were still paying rent and we were upside down. So we had to do
Hmm.
layoffs. But I had had this moment of surrender and integrity and just integrity. It was more important to me now more than it ever had been before. Right. So I told the CEO, I can't do this. Now I can do layoffs, right? I understand business imperatives. I'm not suggesting that companies shouldn't lay people off because that doesn't make sense. And that's just a pipe dream to imagine that an executive would make that choice. But I can't do it the way that it's always been done elsewhere. I said, I'm going to let everyone know that we're going to have layoffs. I'm going to surrender to managing their emotions and the reaction and the narrative and the outcomes. And I'm going to just tell the truth and let's see what happens. So we told everyone we have to have layoffs. We don't know when, we don't know how many, we don't know who. We're going to keep you updated as we have these conversations and figure it out all out, which is super risky. Um, and what ended up happening? Some people looked for jobs, other people didn't. The people who looked for jobs, some of them got jobs, some of them didn't, and they left on their own terms. They were incredibly grateful for the transparency and the honesty,
Mhm.
and that we trusted them with this information, and we didn't have to do layoffs because the company right-sized
Oh,
itself. We
wow.
saved money on severance packages. We saved the culture because the people who stayed were like, "We know we'll get the truth from you." And
Mhm.
I could call some of those people today and say, "Will you join me on my team right now?" They would follow me because they know I'm one of the executives that's willing to risk my own comfort, which is what if they all leave and then I have to hire a bunch of people? That's a
Right,
business inconvenience, right? But that's
right.
not thinking about humanity. And so, I mean, it was better
Yeah.
for our shareholder value, and it was better for the culture, and it was better for results, and it was better for my heart.
Yes, from head to heart. And you so back to surrender. Gosh, so many things to say about that. That's a great story. Well, and it's real. Is um okay. So first off, that is pure surrender, right? Pure
Right.
surrender is because you had never done it before. Now at least you've done it. You have a sense of what could go, but there was more like, I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to be in integrity, and without thinking through all of the scripting and and we don't know yet, just tell them. So that is the ultimate act of leadership surrender. And it's you said humanity. To me, it's like it's faith in humanity. And I think what happened over the years, and we know there's different reasons for this in the decades of how businesses people were taught to do business, and a lot of times it was like factory workers, like don't give them autonomy, don't let them think too much, don't give them, like it's don't because they can't be trusted. This is about
Yeah,
trusting humans, having faith in people without having, as you say, to control and to manage the narrative and the outcomes. Like it's so freeing,
exactly.
and there's
It's
uncertainty.
You said it, without having to control the way it gets done, the outcomes, that delusion of control. The
Right,
delusion that as an executive, I can control what's going to happen here
right,
is what gets you stuck in the action trap, right? And have
right.
faith is so we have in the book a shift model, which is it's the shift framework for shifting to surrender. The S stands for stop fighting reality, right? So I stopped fighting reality. I accepted we had to do layoffs. I couldn't convince the board not to do layoffs. They would just fire me and replace me with someone who would execute what they want, right? But then the H is have faith. It's like, okay, I'm going to have faith in the people that I work with, in the universe. And for me, it's a higher power. But if you don't believe in God or a higher power, then think about what you think the source of all good is. Have faith in that. For my mom, it's rhythm. She has faith in rhythm. So
Mm,
she's just moving forward with faith. Then the I is identify what's yours, which is what is it that I can control? Let me make a choice to take accountability for the thing within my influence. I can control whether or not we keep this a secret or if we tell the truth. And then the F is free yourself from fear. There's a lot of fear based reasons not to tell the truth and come from a place of love, which is a place of abundance, a place of caring for people. And then T is take the next right action, which is not just more action, but the right action coming from the right mindset. And I
mm,
mean, that's how you surrender to lead. And it works. I mean, it just
mhm.
freaking works. I just want to
Yeah. Yeah.
shake people and promise them, you
Right.
know?
Right. And the other thing a couple things that I really like about the model is it's for work, but it's also for life. So, for example, your
Yes.
personal results equation, that's about life, and you can take it
Hmm.
to work. And I think we both know from the work that when we get people aligned with who they are, work and home, you're the same. You take the same values, take the same characteristics, the same presence, ideally, the same, like it generalizes to everything when you can live, because you are an example of that as well. Like you are living the same way. You are trying to live the same way as best you can in all aspects of your life
Yeah. I
with the
mean,
heart, with the heart.
with the heart, we are people in business. This phrase, it's not personal, it's business. I mean, we are people.
Right.
So I don't understand. I don't balance my work and my life. I remember one time I was working with this company in the newsletter. They had a special feature on what do you do in your free time? I just remember that language struck me as when you're free to do what you want, which is
Right.
not during work hours, what do you do, right?
Right.
That's not the right messaging. I want you to feel free working for me all the time. And I want, in your free time, will you come work with us? And
Right.
we'll pay you for it. And you'll
Right.
be free while you're here. And that's why we talk about the personal results equation is
Right.
figuring out what fulfills you. So when I
Right.
do job interviews, when I hire people, the first question I ask them is, what is your personal purpose?
Mm.
And then they say something usually like, well, we like to drive results by activating your
Yeah.
culture, something that sounds like what I want to hear in the context of this job. And I say, no, 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 not like work wise. Your purpose, what is it? It's also
Yeah.
the first question I ask on my Culture Leaders podcast to every interview is, what's your why?
Right. Sure. Why? Yeah. I
And
wrote
then
that
they
down
tell
here too.
me,
Yes.
yeah. And then once they tell me, I'm like, okay, can I tell you about our organizational purpose? And then I'd like you to think about, if you were helping us with this purpose, would that get you closer to fulfilling your purpose? And if so, this might be good. We have purpose fit, which is far more powerful than culture fit, which is, I think, terribly destructive, because culture fit is basically like, do I want to get a beer with you? And if I
Mhm.
want to get a beer with you, that's usually based on our unconscious bias, which is, are you like me? And if
Right.
so, I want to work with you. And then we have this homogenous group of people that all think and act the same way. And
Right.
culture is how you think and act. Like, let's get some diversity of thought in here in order to make sure we're going to drive results in the best possible way. So,
Well, and
purpose fit is
y-
what's up.
right, and you and your company are culture experts, like, and your podcast, like, it's about
Yeah.
culture. But what I like about this, it's that's what we ultimately want. But the ways we achieve that, this is one example of, like, we have to be aligned on our purpose. We have to understand our belief system and why we are engaging in what we're doing, and then, of course, how do we drive that, and are we aligned with it? So there are all these steps. What I want to move to is the other reason. I said there were two things that really jumped at me when I had the opportunity to have this conversation with you. One is your death doula experience, and the other is leading with love instead of fear and control. And
Yeah.
this is moving into also more and more moving into the dialogue, which I love, because I just know, like, so some people, it's like cringy for some people, like, wait, why are we talking about love in the workplace?
Don't talk about love.
And how
It's
does love
inappropriate.
drive revenue, right? But guess what, everyone?
Exactly.
It does. So tell us about that.
Yes, it does. So I have been deeply fascinated with this, and I get so much pushback talking about love in the context of work, because there are many different kinds of love, right? There's
Mhm.
romantic love, there's filial love, there's, so if C.S. Lewis described 4 kinds of love, we're talking about agape love. Agape love is to will the good of another.
Mm.
And that love, the way St. Thomas Aquinas defined it, is to will the good of another is really powerful belief systems to operate within in the workplace. Capitalism, the corporate systems are built on a pyramid type structure typically, right? You've got more resources at the top and less opportunity at the top, more people at the bottom with less resources for them, right? So we are in competition with one another to get to the top and to get access to those resources. And yet the people at the top are looking down at all of their employees and saying, our values here are teamwork and collaboration. It's like, great, you can say unity, teamwork, and collaboration all day long. But the reality is, if there's 3 senior directors and only 1 vice president open position, I'm looking to my left and I'm looking to my right, and I'm like, you're going down. And I'm going to hoard resources and information, and I'm going to take credit for everything that I can to get that top spot, because it means better outcomes for my family, better job security, better career development, better fulfillment if it's doing more things that I'm interested in, whatever, right? So to act like we're not in a fear-based system is just putting your head in the sand, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's why it just doesn't make any sense. So
Mhm.
how can we encourage love, meaning to will the good of another in the workplace? This has become more popular. So Airbnb had love as a corporate value, which I thought was fabulous. New York Life had a whole Super Bowl ad around agape love. I did research on this. And this was when I started at my divinity program. I wanted to see, where does love currently show up in the workplace? And I interviewed a bunch of CHROs who were willing to talk to me about this, from the Fortune 500 companies to small companies. And there were 2 places, the themes from the interviews, but there are two places where love naturally emerges in culture. The first is in deep crisis. So when there's a death in the workplace, when there's a catastrophe, when there's layoffs and something horrible happens, that brings us together and we start to show our humanity. When COVID happened, there was a lot of masks that came off as people connected at a more human level and at a more love level than before. The second place is when we are kicking ass, when
Mm.
we are knocking it out of the park with our results. It brings out people's inner I love you, man, right? They're like,
Mhm.
dude, I love you, man. That was awesome. Let's go to Hawaii for our President's Club retreat to celebrate how great that was. So it exists, but only in the extremes, which means we're capable of it and we can be comfortable there. But how do we nurture it in the middle places, in the everyday, in the water cooler talk, right? And I mean, I was on an executive call with my boss this morning and he told me that he loved me. And I was like, I love you too, dude. With everyone there on the call, we've just normalized it. Part of it is normalizing,
Mm.
creating the belief that it's okay to care about each other here.
Right.
That's not to confuse it with this BS around we're a family, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't encourage or support anyone saying we're like a family at this company because the reality is no, you're not. And you don't lay off family members when times get tough, right? And that's what happens in corporations. And it can be a deep sense of betrayal when you gaslight people into thinking we care about each other and we're a family. And then in the reality, it's a business decision. We had to let you go.
Mhm.
It's not personal, it's business,
Right.
right? So
Right.
we want to stop fighting reality. We're operating in a business relationship. That doesn't mean I can't care for you, and it's a constant remembering to go back to it. Can I tell you one more story? I know I've been talking a lot. Can I
Yeah,
tell you
yeah,
one more quick
please,
story
please.
about this?
Yes.
Okay, so after my Violetta moment, to bring it full circle,
Yes. Yes.
you come and go from surrender. So I was all in on this idea of surrender. And then, months go by, years go by, and then you kind of go back into old habits of trying to action trap things and get your way. And then you remember and you've got to, it's a daily practice, really. And so I decided I needed a new sign from the beyond in order to recommit to this,
Mhm.
practice of surrender. So I asked the universe to send me a coin that I would find on the floor somewhere with my birth year on it. And I knew that when I found that coin, whatever was happening in that moment, it was going to be something to learn from. And that was going to be my sign. So I became obsessive about finding this coin. I was walking around
You're
with my
looking down. You are
head
looking
down.
down
I'm
a lot.
looking
Yeah,
down
yeah, yeah.
constantly. I'm constantly picking up coins. And my boyfriend started noticing and he's like, dude, you're kind of getting weird about the coin thing. And I'm like, I got to find the coin. I know it's going to be really magical and important. And I've now action trapped spiritual experiences,
Yeah,
right?
there you
I'm
go.
trying to
Right.
create
Yeah.
the spiritual experience. And one day he comes home and he says, "Can you sit down for a second?" And he sits on the couch and he hands me a box. And inside the box is a little note and it said, "I heard you were looking for one of these." And it's a coin with my birth year on it. And
Wow.
I was like, this is the moment I was supposed to learn something. And what I
Mhm.
learned was that that was a moment of love. That was a moment not of some spiritual, universal synchronicity that taught me something, but that was just someone seeing someone in need and being the sign. He became the
Mhm.
sign I was looking for. And he's just like, here's a
Yeah.
moment, here's a service to you. I love you and you're okay. And I thought, oh, I need to become the sign. Stop searching for my sign, right? But I need to
Right.
be the sign and be love for others. And that's the spiritual experience.
That is
So
it.
there it is.
Thank you for that story. That is, I mean, it be love, right? Be
Yeah.
love. And if we could, wherever we go, work, not work, community, grocery store, like radiate love, radiate
Yeah.
kindness, radiate compassion. It, as we have talked about, there is a transmission. There is a transmission that occurs. And it's not about the words as much as it is, I have found in the work and life, is the presence of like what we are trying to embody and how we show up and what we bring to a conversation. It's everything. And it can make a conversation like we are going to have to some layoffs are coming, some really hard conversations. It can be received with love, even though it's a very
Yeah.
difficult message.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a
Yes,
one last thing.
yes,
It's
yes.
also loving to hold people accountable, right? I mean,
Right.
we it, I can love you, and by loving you, I can say, "Now let's talk about what we need to accomplish here." And I see that you're slipping,
Yes,
and that's loving. It's not just all about you're good. There's a difference
yes.
between being nice and love, which is to will the good of another. I know you can do better, and I want to help you get there. Right? That's love.
Totally. That is love. And you actually just led me to where I was going as we are winding down is having spent also decades in the parenting space and parent
Mm,
consultation and working with parents. Um, Seeing the relationship and similarities between what we call conscious parenting, what we call conscious leadership, right? The principles, the tenets, they're the same. The values are the same, and I am all about simplicity and like let's work on ourselves to be a way in life that then we can apply to all of the different places and roles that we have. And I was thinking the same thing as I was reading about surrender, surrender leadership. And you just said it too. Like with accountability and with parenting, it's an act of love to to have standards for someone because we believe in them, and then hold them accountable because we are guiding them in them holding themselves accountable and doing what we know they can do and what we need them to do. I mean, there's this whole parallel that I see, and I was wondering from your own parenting experience, do you see surrender leadership and who you are as a surrender leader apply to your parenting?
absolutely. I mean, I'm no parenting guru, okay? I have an 8-year-old and I'm just doing my best. But
Yeah.
it's about beliefs, right? So to surrender is to understand that you can't control people and to realize what I can do is create an experience that will shape a belief and therefore inspire an action and hopefully get a result. So I'm conscious of the experiences I create for my daughter. This morning, I was on this Wolf Blitzer Situation Room on CNN, and I had to miss my daughter's morning sing every
Mm,
Friday, the last Friday of every month. She does this, and I had to miss that. That was devastating for me, and I don't think that Wolf Blitzer is more important than being there for my daughter's morning sing. And I had a whole conversation with my boyfriend this morning about, do I go? Do I not go? And ultimately I was thinking about what experience do I want to create for my daughter and what belief do I want to nurture in here? And there's two. There's that I'm there for her and I love her. And there's also that women can be kick ass people that go on Wolf Blitzer and talk about whatever it is I talked about, right? Those are two beliefs I wanna nurture, and so I made a call. I made a call to
mhm.
do Wolf Blitzer, also because we're going to Disneyland tomorrow, so I feel like I'm
Oh,
gonna
there
make
you
it
go.
up there,
You
right?
have a little capital coming in tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was like, "Let me bank
yeah,
on the Disneyland
yeah,
choice." But it's thinking of parenting decisions through that lens. What
yeah,
experience do I wanna create, and what belief am I trying to nurture? That's
yeah.
how I do it.
There you go. What I will add to that from my parenting experience with now older children and having gone through it. I know we have many listeners who are parents and um, is the idea of surrendering in some of those situations, particularly when our kids get older and we are so powerless and we cannot control the outcomes and we cannot control the variables. The idea of surrendering to what is, going back to what you and Joe talk about, and controlling the aspects of what you can control and letting the
Yeah,
rest go, which of course is Dalai Lama at its one of the best tenets of what he
yeah.
talks about is it's I know it's scary. I know it creates so much uncertainty, but it also is freeing to know all you can do is what you can do, and we have to have faith and trust in what will unfold.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, have faith, identify what's yours, free yourself from fear, take the next
Yes.
right action. Take the next right action, by the way, also borrowed from Buddhism because
Mhm.
that's, you
Yes.
know, it's the right action. And I mean, I have a lot of friends in recovery, and many of them have children that are now in addiction because it is a family disease. And there's nothing harder, in
Yeah.
my experience, than surrendering your child's life and the outcome of their life when they're in addiction and there's nothing you can do about it. And so it's hard for parents.
Yeah.
It's incredibly challenging. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier in the workplace, that's for sure.
Final question. I just did my Wolf Blitzer there. Final question. What's your why, Jessica?
My why is to serve God and others. Thank you for asking.
Crisp, clear, concise, and an
Simple.
example on your personal results equation, which I know soon you're going to lead people to. Um,
Yeah.
so you're doing it, and it's a privilege to listen to you, watch you, and feel you doing it. And that is a transmission that I have experienced, and I know our listeners will as well. And that for people to know, like if we can be at the most intense situations, a lot of high stakes situations with lots of money, lots of responsibility, lots of stakeholders, and this approach of surrender not only works, it's good for your health, it's good for those you are in relationship with, it's good for your company, and it drives change and increases revenue. So
I mean, why wouldn't
check
you?
it out. So tell everyone
Yeah.
where to find all this good stuff and your two podcasts and the results equation and all the resources you.
Great. So, surrendertolead.com is where you can find everything about the book. For your listeners, we have a special gift, which is the personal results equation builder. And it's something that we talked about identifying your why, what results you want to accomplish, what belief systems are critical to you driving success. And so, if you want to get that, you can go to personalbuilder.surrendertolead.com. And that's a special resource you only get if you pre-order, but you don't have to pre-order for your listeners. You can just get that resource. But we do encourage you to pre-order too. And then I have two podcasts. One is the CEO Daily Brief, and it's a 5-minute daily podcast on what's happening in culture today that you need to know about if you're a leader. And then the second is Culture Leaders, which is the masters behind movements, these people who really believe in the power of culture and driving results, interviews with CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, like the CEO of IKEA, the CEO of Denny's. So if you want to hear from some really incredible leaders who buy into this, you can go there.
I loved the interview with the CEO of Denny's. What an amazing
She's
person.
wonderful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
she believes in the power of love at work. She
Yeah,
talks
she does.
openly about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time today, and love the work you're doing. And we are going to support it, and I'm going to be sharing it. And I actually did share the concept with a coaching client that I was coaching before the session. It beautifully came into what he was dealing with, and so just want to know that it's out there and we're doing the work.
Good. We're doing the work. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for
yeah.
this interview and for your support. It's been such a lovely conversation. I'm glad we went where we went.
Let's keep going there. Like, this is what it's all about. And guys, it's about being human. It's about being authentic. It's about being vulnerable and connection, authenticity. And it works. Like, it works in life, and it feels much better than not. Jessica is an example of living in her integrity, in her authenticity, and in her purpose. And you can just see and feel how aligned the message that she is sharing with all of us is for her, the impact it has had on her own life, and now the impact it has had on employees and organizations and companies all over. This is real. Here are 5 key takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Letting go of control opens the door to deeper trust, alignment, and exponential results in life and leadership. Number 2, beliefs drive actions. The most effective leaders create experiences that shape beliefs, not just policies that demand compliance. Number 3, love belongs at work. Leading with love means willing the good of others, and it actually drives better business outcomes. Number 4, integrity and transparency heal cultures. Jessica's story of surrendering control during layoffs shows how honesty builds trust, loyalty, and performance. And number 5, leadership and parenting share the same heartbeat. Conscious leadership and conscious parenting both require faith, accountability, and the courage to let go. No matter what your leadership roles, surrendering allows for possibilities beyond what you can imagine. Thanks for listening, everyone. As a corollary to the personal results equation, which I took and has wonderful information to get you aligned with your values, your beliefs, and the outcomes you want. Also, you know that we have a new growth path quiz to check you out where you are on your growth journey, your strengths, your challenges, your edges, and resources to keep you growing. That's at www.drdanpeters.com/quiz. Thanks for being a part of our amazing community, for subscribing, your 5-star reviews. You know what I'm going to say. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.